Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. This is another episode of the New Resilience podcast, where, again, we are talking to folks like you who've been in the industry for so long and the lessons that you've learned along the way, the stories. It's really about that. It's having to like sort of share that. So let's just get right into it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I always try to start with a story around like what made you sort of like get into the space, like what got you started, what's kept you sort of motivated. So maybe we could just start there.
Okay. Well, I started this because a high school friend of mine that was 21 died of a cocaine overdose, and his father was a high-powered attorney and kind of made it into what I felt like was more of a heart attack than the actual disease, and it was just it kind of rubbed me the wrong way at the time, and I just was a little bit disgruntled, and I wanted to. I said if I'm ever able to help someone, because I wasn't around for when this happened. I just unfortunately had to flew home and and then had found out. I said I want to definitely make sure to help people, and see, if I ever get a chance, I'm gonna try to help people get to a better place
Yeah.
and help try to save as many people as you can. They have to save themselves, but just wanted to try to do something. Also, my grandfather was an alcoholic, on my mom's side, and just seeing that dynamic was just
Hmm.
what it did to the family dynamics. It just put a definitely a lot of stress and a lot of just
Yeah.
emotional damage. So just seeing that from firsthand, it just kind of put things in perspective on just like that's not how I wanted to live my life or wanted to see people live their life. And so anytime I had a chance to help, that was kind of the thing that made me get in this business.
Okay. So like it was from a deeply personal
Yeah, it was from a
space.
deep personal experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I just it's been, man, I can't believe it's been almost 20 years. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's gone by pretty fast.
What's kind of kept you going? I'm sure the space has changed a lot.
Yes,
Gets stressful at times.
absolutely. That's a good question. I would say um I think that it's getting to know that families are getting the help that they need, and then also learning about programs. I'm learning every day about people that are in this space. There's always some subtle change in this business, and so it's just that's kept me going. And then just some of the folks that I've done business with and partnered up with along the way have just been amazing people, and that's kind of the thing that's kept me going. I'm also married to a therapist who's
Yeah.
been a therapist of 35 years, so I think uh, that's also been a piece where she's more understanding because she understands what goes on with this business. So I think it's a little bit hand in hand, and then I've been blessed to work for some very good people. So I think that's always the case. It
Mm-hmm.
could be, there's a lot of programs out there, and they're not always
Yeah.
in the best interest of the client, and
Yeah.
I've been blessed to be in. That's never been the case for me, so I've been lucky on that end.
Awesome. Talking about the role, like maybe talk for the folks. A lot of people will know you, but for the
Sure.
folks who, for you, you might be new. Maybe talk a bit about your current role right now. Give
Yeah.
people a background.
Okay. From the job that I'm currently at.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'm with BrightQuest. We're a long-term, multi-level term care,
Yeah.
and we do all levels of care, mood
Mm-hmm.
and thought disorders, and with co-occurring. So that means typically we take clients that are struggling with schizophrenia, schizoaffective,
Mm-hmm.
borderline personality, mood and thought disorder, major depressive disorder, and we can take folks that have eating disorder as well as SUD,
Yeah.
substance abuse,
Got it.
all the way from RTC level of care to PHP with housing to IOP with care,
Mm.
housing, and then that's our three levels, and then we have semi-independent living as well.
Awesome. So whole range
The
of
whole gamut of
yeah. Yeah.
care.
Okay.
Yes.
And you talked about like you've been in the industry for like 20 years. So maybe talk about like the roles that you've taken over time. Like has it transitioned? You've primarily
Sure.
yeah.
That's funny. That's been a while. So yes. So My first role starting was actually working as a transport agent.
Mm.
What that means is you can do all ages but I was in particular working with 12 to 17-year-olds. That
Why
were,
that age group?
that was just what my buddies'
Okay.
company, that's what they focused on.
Mm-hmm.
A guy named John Hayward, a great guy, he's still
Mm-hmm.
doing this job over 30 years. He worked for a company. He owns a company called Visions,
Mm-hmm.
and
That was
transport vision.
VYAC.
No,
Yeah.
Visions
Oh, okay.
Transport. Yes, Visions Transport.
Okay.
And so we would transport kids that were struggling with either addiction or mental health, primary. And he would work with families, and then we would meet the families, and then sometimes they'd have somebody called an educational consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is someone that is able to kind of work with a family and then kind of figure out where their loved one should go.
Got
And
it.
so once they figured that process out, we were the folks that educational consultants would usually recommend,
Right.
because they didn't want families transporting their kid, because that could just turn into a whole nother
Sure.
disaster. So we would meet them sometimes in the middle of the night. And we would just inform them that they were going to be able to have to take, a small bag, and then,
Yeah.
and then we would either drive or fly, depending on how, the client would
Sure.
accept wanting to go.
Yeah. What situation that they were in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was how I started. And then I was taking kids to this place that's no longer there. It was called Greenbrier Academy. And I met a guy named LJ, who was the owner of the program. And he and I just clicked. Every time I brought a client there, it was just a good situation. And he was just like, hey, how come the kids are so calm when they come? And
Yeah.
And I just said, hey, it was more because I was human to human, and just I just was treating them like, treating them like I would want to be treated, and
Sure.
and that's just how it would go. And he said, how would you like to try to do why don't you come work for me? And I lived in Penn Springs, West Virginia,
Okay.
from San Diego, and said, hey, if you want to come work for me,
Yeah.
come on over and we'll train you. And I did. I don't know. That's just crazy. I think about it now, and
Yeah.
there's no way in heck if you could have
Yeah.
told me I was going to move to
West Virginia.
Moved to West Virginia and then worked the Beltway, and just seeing the joy of girls like going in there, shoulders shrunk down,
Mm-hmm.
in tears, thinking no one loved them, and then
Mhm.
just to watch them just blossom was just like,
Yeah.
It
You can't
was-
replace
you
that.
can't replace that.
Yeah.
It was like Christmas all the time when I said, I
Wow.
just say people, it was like, I felt like I was Santa Claus.
Wow.
I don't know what other way to express it, for lack of better words.
Yeah. Neither can you put a price on that.
No, you can't put a price. And just watching them go through,
Yeah.
because it was a therapeutic boarding school, to watch them go through and be able to just figure out where their goals are and go and get scholarships to colleges, and just,
Wow.
it was just so amazing to see that
Mhm.
transformation. So I did that. And then also I worked prior for another company. I don't want to throw them in because I don't want to be, God bless their souls, Bill and Bob Lane. Right before that, I left my buddy's company and worked for Bill and Bob Lane. They're known in the industry, and they're no longer alive. Unfortunately, they passed within like 6 to 8 months of each other, and it was just unfortunate. But they knew everybody. And when I left there to go to Greenbrier Academy, they were some of the best folks, Bill Lane in particular, that literally opened up his Rolodex. And anytime I went somewhere, he was like, Kelly, I want you to meet Bernard. I want you to meet, I want you to meet anybody.
Yeah.
And he was like, he would introduce me to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the person that owns this treatment center. You need to know Kelly. Kelly's
Yeah.
definitely this guy. And he was beyond the most influential person that I had in this business.
Wow.
And I want to give him love and his flowers.
Yeah.
And I miss that guy, man. I used to live around the corner from him. And
This was in
this was in San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah. But he would be at every conference that we go to. You
Yeah.
go to our conferences.
Yeah.
And like I said, he would sit on a couch and he knew everybody.
So you just,
And it was just a blessing. It was just to be able to
yeah,
sit with him and just, pick his brain and also just meet everybody. And he knew people from whether it be the staff support
yeah,
all the way to the case managers,
mm-hmm.
to the therapists, to the
Yeah,
owners. He
yeah.
knew all and everybody.
Mm.
He was that kind of person. He was from New York and just was
Okay.
just,
He had
yeah,
that personality.
yeah, personality. Yeah.
Yeah,
Old school AA guy and
yeah.
just an awesome guy.
Nice.
And I miss that guy, but,
I mean, you kind of have that personality right now.
thank
I mean,
you.
we were at the West Coast Symposium. I'm not even kidding. We were at the booth. There was no one, and then you land in, and there's just people just gravitating towards you. I'm like, what is happening? Because I went out for like 5 minutes, and I come back like, what is happening there? I say, okay, it's Kelly sitting there. So,
Oh, man, thank you.
yeah.
The check is in the mail. No, I think I've been around and been able to meet some good people here. And my hope, as I always tell folks, is like, hey, even if I can't do anything personally, like if we're relationships where we can't, there's just not something where we're going to be able to probably send somebody to you or vice versa. My goal is always just to connect people, even if it's not. So, hey, maybe if you can't connect with me,
Yeah.
maybe these are some programs that I really like in your area. And if you don't know them, hey, let's see where we can partner up. And I think that's the key. And I've been around some great folks. I'm going to mention Keith Fosgate, another person that I don't know where I'd be without that guy. That guy's been in my corner from
Oh,
day
really?
one.
Yeah.
Chris Hammock, who now owns a program. I
Rose Bay.
took,
Yeah.
I've taken over his job. And so just having those folks that were just foundations of my area, which is San Diego. Oh, just second to none. Just being able to have those people
Yeah.
and be around good people and just be able to bounce ideas and ask for help because I'm human. So
Yeah.
just being able to ask, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And it's just been amazing.
No, yeah, I think totally agree. Like we've seen over and over again, even in our limited time, this idea of like someone comes in, like you come in fresh and someone takes you under their wing and like you kind of pay it forward.
Yes, you want to pay it forward, especially in this business. I think it will always come back to benefit you. And I'm an open book. I want to always try to help people, and that's the goal. Is just to try to introduce people to as many people because this is the business of meeting. And you never know. This business is so. I've never seen it in any other industry.
Yeah.
Where 1 week the person could be the staff support.
Yeah.
And then you see them a year later and they're running a program or they're now the clinical director of a program. So you just never know.
Yeah.
And that's why I just always treat people with respect anyways.
Yeah.
But it's it's one of those things
you
where
look forward to happy coincidences. Like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like now you're like focused on outreach at the
I'm focused with outreach. I'm a community liaison, like I said, for BrightQuest.
Yeah.
And we're under the Constellations umbrella. So right now, I'm just basically San Diego, a little bit of Southern California. We kind of divvy it out where there's some other reps that rep under Constellations. And so, when we're able to partner up, we're able to partner up. And then, it's just a simple call. Hey, Michelle, are you taking this? And if you're not, then I'd love to have it. I've known these people for this long and vice versa. If she's known somebody, we're very easy, very low maintenance when it comes to territories. And I just think because at the end of the day, it's about relationships.
Yeah.
And why am I going to try to knock on a door at a facility where someone that is in our umbrella that's worked with them for 8 years and all of a sudden I'm the new guy?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. So we just kind of figure it out on the way. And then as we go, we try to, just make sure that the people are being seen and being heard and just hearing the message of Constellations and then Cero Mental Health, who's our parent company, parent owner.
So like you've been also like in the outreach role for a while. So again, folks listening right now, like I'm sure like could learn a lot from your experiences. So one thing that comes to mind is like maybe the job is maybe easy for you, but like
I wouldn't say that. It's like
so like maybe what are to like make it more approachable for everyone else? Like, what are maybe like one or two major challenges that you face in your role today?
Well, I'm currently at a place that is private pay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we're currently in our San Diego location in network with Magellan and then Tri-West.
Okay.
Um, First, getting the word out because we've been known for over 40 years to be private pay.
Mm.
So that's the first,
Okay, so getting the word out there that you are now in network with.
correct. And then as the months come on, we'll probably add some. And so just trying to figure out when is the time to let certain treatment centers know, which is easy, but the hospitals are a whole different game because if you are trying to do what we call in service in this business, which is going and presenting in front of them, you probably want to wait until you figure out all the insurances that are there because they are not, their time is short. And
So
then
you only get a few shots, or
you only
maybe
get a
one.
few shots. Exactly. So my goal is to kind of navigate through that process. Also, trained when I first come to a company, what my goal is to see who sent us folks. So try to get data on who's been sending us folks in the last 6 months, the last year,
Yeah.
the last 2 years. And if I can get that kind of data, maybe
Yeah.
I can find some folks that I know personally that have sent some folks.
Yeah.
And then try to just reconnect with them and see, hey, you used to send us folks kind of, was there something that, went on or is there, or just, did you,
Especially if they dropped off, like
yeah,
if
they
they
dropped
stopped.
off. I kind of want to figure out why they dropped
Yeah.
off and see how we can kind of reconnect.
Mm.
And sometimes it's as simple as, you know,
Giving a phone.
giving a phone call.
Yeah.
That's sometimes it's just
Yeah.
that it just takes the phone call.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was maybe they were present, that they were very good relationship with maybe an executive director or the head of the therapist. It just depends. Every situation is different, but I think what you want to do is go in as a BD rep. If you're a newer rep, you definitely want to go to like what we call the local groups in the meetings. So there's SOAP in San Diego.
Local groups in the meetings.
Local meetings like SOAP.
Okay.
Riverside has IE Man.
Yep.
And so you definitely want to go there, present. Usually they let you have like a minute, and then you'll present and kind of give them a brief description of like what you do, what levels of care,
Yeah.
if you take insurance, and maybe a few nuggets of like kind of the models that you use. I think that's very important, especially when you're doing insurances, because you definitely want to know a couple of things, the differentiators. So if it means maybe that person doesn't take Blue Shield, or maybe we take Magellan, or vice versa. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out if they do the same level of care, that's great. But
Yeah.
when you get a call and you can't actually take their insurance,
Yeah.
maybe you can send them to us.
Yep.
And vice versa. And that's usually how that kind of works. But you definitely want to know the differences of programs so that you're able to kind of navigate. And also maybe they only do RTC level of care, or maybe they do PHP with housing and they don't do the IOP piece, or maybe they only do the IOP. So there's trying to figure out the differentiators and what that program does, and then versus what you do, and then try to navigate through that and try to kind of connect with folks that do similar but different, or different insurances and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that would be I think that's just super important. I also think insurance now, years ago, insurance used to be frowned upon, like the actual facilities that took insurance. It's a completely different ball game now. Everybody that is gone. That is just like left the building in Southern California in particular. Folks, families were in need right now, and times are tight.
They want to use insurance.
They want to use insurance. And there's enough good insurance places. I never understood that, by the way. I always thought that was a little funny, but it used to be private pay was like a badge of honor. And so that has gone to the wayside. And
is that related in some sense to maybe the stigma that was associated? And that's
I think it was a part. And I think also families and it's still, I would say Denver East folks still like to use private pay, to be quite honest with you, and that's fine. I don't know. I can't speak for every family, but what my thought is maybe they didn't want to have maybe a potential scarlet letter. Now,
Sure.
how, as far as just their family member, but yeah, now it's the complete opposite, especially in California. Folks want to use their insurance, and quite frankly, they should be able to use their
Yeah,
insurance.
yeah, like whatever help that anyone can get and make it more accessible.
Exactly.
That
You're
just
paying
makes
for
sense. You've
insurance,
made,
so
yeah, might
why
as well.
you got to use it.
Yeah,
It's
you
it's
gotta
it's a
use it.
no-brainer. And so yeah, just trying to connect families, and then yeah, that's the goal, is to just, like I said, if I was a business BD rep and freshly starting, I would definitely go and see programs. If I had a lot of insurances, I would definitely figure out a way to go do an in-service. They're a little feisty at the hospitals. They're not like the most polite ways, but there's ways to crack that code.
Hmm.
And then I would say I'll give them one golden nugget. Can't give them all, but I'll give them one. If you're gonna go to a hospital, you got to make sure you go at the same time every time you go. So if you're gonna go at 10 a.m. to go to their mental health area, or their 5150 area, go and talk to them at the same time, shake their hand, give them your
Okay.
business card, and
Yeah.
maybe a little thing of licorice, and
Yeah.
then come back at that same time in 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
Okay.
And every time you got to come, so you see the same case manager.
Okay.
Because if you don't, there'll be different case managers at the time.
Who are in there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Got it.
And so that's one little nugget. I can't give them all.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
can't give
yeah.
them all,
You
but
gotta
that's
keep.
definitely a one that I learned and someone taught me. So
Yeah.
and he knows who he is. He's probably laughing at me right now. I used to, funny story. I'm more a person that likes to connect. I like treatment centers and individual practitioners and group practices, and maybe that's because I'm married to a therapist. And this was years ago, and he said, "Kelly, this game is changing. You want to do EAPs, hospitals, unions." And I stalked at him like, I said, no, we battled, and he's laughing now because I have to, and I don't see him. He doesn't go to conferences. He's not a conference guy. He doesn't believe in conferences, but if he ever sees this, he'll know who he is.
Okay.
And just a perfect gentleman, and just a brilliant guy. And listen, if I had to listen to him
Yeah.
years ago, you Lord only
Please
knows
do
what
it. Probably not in the podcast with me.
I probably wouldn't. I might be somewhere a little more tropical, but here we are. But lessons learned. So I always tell people, be open to listen,
Hmm.
and don't think that because I don't want to say I came in there knowing it all,
Yeah.
but I definitely probably was. It was working for me, and it worked. But just because it worked for you at one facility does not mean it's going to work for your next facility. If you move to a different facility, you have to always be willing to adapt.
Okay.
This game isn't you always have to be open to being changes, because changes come here.
Okay.
And then when they come, and you will get swept away. And that's just the nature of this business, fortunate or unfortunate.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk about I think you said like a couple of things. One was do you believe in conferences? Like that's maybe like one thing to sort of like think about. And then overall, I think your comment is people should be open to change. So maybe also like talk about like how the role and the
Okay.
approach should be changing.
Okay. Am I a fan of conferences? Yes. When you first are a rookie in the game,
Yeah.
I think you're overwhelmed because you're there, you're meeting 100 people,
Yeah.
and you've only got 30 seconds most of the time, or maybe
Yeah.
a minute to pitch to them. And so you're grabbing cards, and at the end of the night or the end of the conference, you have 120 business cards.
Yeah.
And then you're saying to myself, what am I going to do with all these cards, and who
Yeah.
did I connect with, and blah, blah, blah. I think the goal should be, depending on if you're a regional or a local rep, to try to make sure you're connecting with the folks that are in an area where they can either connect with you, and then getting more deeper into a deeper relationship with them. So try to find folks that you can spend more time or setting up time
Mm-hmm.
in the future to be able to set up, because it's basically a goal is to. I used to go in there and cook, like I said, get 150 business cards. This time I wanted to have more structure, and so it was more. I had dinners already set up. I had
Mm.
individual meetings set up,
This was all before the
all
conference,
before the conference. I
and
had
because you knew who
because
was.
I knew at this point in my career, I know who I want to connect with. So I personally wanted to connect with folks that have previously sent somebody or has sent somebody in before, or they've sent somebody to me before in my previous uh,
Hmm.
jobs. So that's what I did. And I wanted to let them know where I was at, which was BrightQuest. And then I
Mm.
kind of had conversations about BrightQuest,
Mm-hmm.
and then, seeing if there's a way to potentially partner up and then, and learn more about where they're at currently now. Cause some people moved just like I moved, and
Yeah.
just kind of learning what they're doing now and their role. And then,
Yeah.
but conferences can be definitely overwhelming, but they can definitely be a benefit. I don't know. I'm going to say this, and conferences are probably going to kill me. I don't know the significance of booths anymore. That's just my personal opinion.
Mm.
Um,
That's a strong opinion.
yeah, it's a strong opinion, and
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong. I think it's more branding now. I think it's not necessarily a benefit to me as a BD rep individually. I think it might be branding and be huge for the actual treatment centers.
Mm-hmm.
So I see where there's value there. But for a BD rep
To
to
establish a relationship,
establish a relationship, but you got to understand, you're putting me in one spot and you're not allowing me
to
to
move
move
around.
around. But
Yeah.
the whole goal is to meet people, and then
I see that. I mean, even as someone who is representing New Resilience, I think we've felt that sometimes where,
yeah, and then you can't leave certain
yeah,
conferences. You can't leave your booth, and
yeah,
then you're stuck, and then where you're limited on your time to meet folks,
yeah,
and then people are asking you to, hey, can you meet at this time? Can you have a coffee with me? Or can you have
yeah,
a lunch? And you're like, no, I'm stuck at this booth. You've got to
yeah,
come to me.
yeah,
So it kind of limits your rep
yeah,
to kind of do that. I also think it's okay, like if you're a new program or you're, Sarah Mental Health or Constellations, we're
yeah,
huge.
yeah.
So we have enough reps that, we can do the booth. But for a rookie, I just,
Smaller treatment
yeah,
centers.
small treatment centers, maybe the treatment centers that are up and coming and want a presence and just to be known. I guess that's a good way because you're going to get eyes on you.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the benefit. For me personally, I would I would rather spend um, do either a lunch, small dinner, intimate dinner with 6 to 8 folks, whether
Mm-hmm.
and reps or clinicians, and
Mm-hmm.
just get the time to spend with them and kind of and learn, like I said, more about what they do and see if what they're doing with the high, because we mainly deal with high acuity. So what are they doing with the client when they see that, and when they're having to when they can't take care of that client's needs and they need to send them out, where are they sending them, and what's their thought process behind that, and just trying to see where we can fit in and to try to be a resource.
Hmm.
So because that's the main goal. I think
Yeah.
when you're able to be a resource for clinicians, admissions folks that call you, that's my goal. I think I tell folks all the time, hey, call me as a resource. Even if you think it's the impossible, give me a call and let me see if I can work my magic and see if I can help get you a family, 3 references to call for whatever
Mm-hmm.
issue it is.
Got it. Yeah, that's fascinating. Here, and in some sense, you're saying, and I wanted to ask you this question, like, because you talked about even when you're going to conferences, your approach, it seems like right now, is to deepen existing relationships than maybe create net new.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do deepen, and don't get me wrong. There's a number for everybody has a number in their head. Casey Gooding from Jaywalker always told me, he had a set goal for his reps to meet a certain amount of new folks.
Mm-hmm.
It just varies depending on which area is, but you definitely want to meet new folks. But I think not diving deep into the folks that you already have some relationship with.
That's a missed
I,
opportunity.
I think it's a missed opportunity.
Okay, okay. Do you think it's a function of what stage of career that you're in that?
That could be the case. I think it could definitely be the case. Yeah, because I know, a lot of folks, so I think that that does matter. Um, but I think you want to try to throw your net out to as many folks, obviously,
Yeah.
and so throw it out as far as you can throw it, and then see what you can get. However, I think it's imperative to do this job long.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna want to do it where you're building good relationships, where people have the trust
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
call you to send either their loved one or a client.
Yeah.
Um, hospitals a little different because they're a little faster. They have a process where they have to get the client in and out
Mm-hmm.
relatively quick. So that's a little different. But any treatment centers or therapy or group practices or clinicians or especially education consultants, no, you want to build a relationship because you want to know exactly what their expectations are so that when you are presented a client that you're able to say yes or no,
Mm-hmm.
based on if that client is a fit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole process. Everybody has a deep process. We have a process where they're going to go through they're going to interview us just as much as we're going to interview them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be able to get like a fine comb and be able to see if they're a fit. And if they're a fit, then, that's where we'll make the next step.
Hmm. Okay.
It's not just as simple as, hey, I got the insurance and you're going to come in.
Okay.
It's more of a process of, are they a right fit for our milieu? And, that will be between an admissions person and then a clinician will interview them. And then, generally some places will have the executive director kind of oversee that as well
Yeah.
as the psychiatrist. And then they'll work on hand to hand depending on if they've come from a treatment center
Mm-hmm.
or a clinician or just off the street. So kind of if they've ever had treatment before, if they're on medications, what are the
Mm-hmm.
medications? And so you try to gather all that information. And some places require the rep to get that and others don't. It's just kind of a case by case basis.
Got it. And then when you're going into these conferences, like trying to like set up these relationships, like deepen them, sh- is there a lot of groundwork that you're also doing and like learning beforehand about like these?
Yeah, I mean, the good rule of thumb would be to see if they have a website
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of, learn a little bit. If they have videos, kind of learn kind of what they do, what they're known for.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of get a little bit of, familiarity with them.
Yeah.
And then just kind of also want to learn who they are as an individual.
Hmm.
Because to me, that is super important in this business. It's
Sure.
like, hey, I don't want to only just talk to you about
Business.
like business.
Yeah.
What are what are your likes and what do you do,
Yeah.
and know your kids' names and
Yeah.
birthdays and so on and so forth. I just think that's so important. My wife taught me that.
Yeah.
She was super smart on just wanting to know
Yeah.
folks. See pictures on their desk.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
who's their kids, and
Yeah.
would just want to know it because she'd
Yeah.
want to know it
Yeah.
and would remember when their birthdays are and
Yeah.
just everything. And I try to take a little of those nuggets because I think
Mm.
those go a long way.
That kind of like it's funny because even with the interview with Gabe recently, that's what something that came about in like sort of thinking about how to establish the relationship in some sort, which is not just business, but getting to know that person.
Yeah, I just think
Yeah.
that's just a smart way to go and the right
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to be quite honest with you, I've also worked with folks that I don't like.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say it. And
Yeah.
if they actually do quality work, I
Yeah.
have to let my ego go
Sure.
because at the end of the day, it's for the client, and
Yeah.
I
They
want to
are
make
getting better.
they're getting better and they're getting the service. There was times where I worked for a place and yeah, the individual that we would send them to, they weren't very nice, but they get great work.
You have
And
to live.
they weren't
Yeah.
nice to me, but they're
Yeah.
great to the client.
Kind of everything. So
You just chalk it up and
yeah.
say, okay, they're handling business and they're doing it appropriately. And I learned a long time ago by a guy named Kansas Cafferty. He said, I'm all about integrity, and if they're doing the right thing, then
Yeah.
I don't care if they're mean to me.
Yeah. It's a bit mean, bit ass.
I
Like,
can shake
that's
it
fine.
off.
Yeah.
We're adults,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And so yeah, but yeah, you just want to try to learn as much as you can about what they do and what they don't do.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we talked about differentiators. I think that's a huge
Yeah.
part of our business.
How do you like when you're trying to build a relationship with someone, maybe like I think you talked about some aspects of it, but you know someone and then you meet them over like a period of time. Like what's your process? Is there a process to it? Like what do you talk about? Because again, maybe the program's already there, but over time,
Sure.
are you hammering home the same message or is it about outcomes,
I think there's
definitions?
definitely outcome studies. It depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
Okay. If I'm talking to a BD rep, they generally want to know what insurances do you take and what level of care are you and what's your age of your milieu
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what your how are you EMDR or DBT or
Yeah.
what modalities that you use. It's kind of that's kind of what's going
And
on.
reminders of those
And
every time?
reminders of those, not necessarily every time, but just kind of, once we've established that, I think it's just I like to do a 5 touches, so
Interesting. Okay.
that's
Over the
my
course
over the
of,
course of time. And so trying to just make sure that I've called, emailed, set up a one-on-one if we can, or a virtual,
mm-hmm.
and then kind of
So go through every mode
go
pretty
through
much.
every mold. Exactly. And then that has been my experience is that when you have after 5 touches of somebody, they generally are going to know what
Yeah.
you do and kind of vice versa.
Yeah.
And
That's a good heuristic to keep in mind.
yes, absolutely. And there's days where I'm like, okay, I got to call and I
And
got
is
to
it 5 touches every few months or is it
I try to mark it on a calendar
okay?
and not and it just depends on there's different levels of like who feel I should be spending more time with, and so and then it's just it's a little tricky science, but I don't know if, for lack of a better words, what I try to do is make sure that I'm touching folks um, at the end of the day, those 5 touches, and then try to communicate with them every couple of weeks,
Hmm.
and then just have a reminder on the calendar, kind of like, hey, make sure to
Yeah.
say hello
Yeah.
to such and such.
Totally.
Then I also do every morning 5 texts to people every day, 5 new people,
Okay.
and then I call 5 new people.
Shit.
Then I
You
send
have
you
a
five
system.
new
Yeah.
emails.
So
Yeah,
the rule of five.
the rule of 5. And so yeah, that's been a good rule of thumb. And yes, I'm sure I know a bunch of people, but at the end of the day, um, I just want to keep I think it's part of keeping your name and keeping your company's brand in their head, because quite frankly, is when there's a call and it's quick and there's a crisis, it's going to be who did they last
Yeah.
generally
The
talk to?
recall.
The recall. So it's muscle memory
Yeah.
in my eyes. Now I could be totally off, but I know how I sometimes operate when I'm driving, someone's calling,
Yeah.
and I try to give them, obviously 3 is what you're supposed to be giving folks. So I always give them 3, and if to be quite frankly, if I can give them 5 or 7, I will.
Oh, like three
Three
potential.
three potential places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always try to give them more. I also try to tell families, even if they're not going to be a fit for BrightQuest. I've had this call just recently where I kind of explained her the process
Mm-hmm.
of what's going to be expected of you and expected of your loved one, and kind of, hey, this is how they're going to operate, and then you're going to kind of have to make a decision based on
Yeah.
depending on what your needs are. Sometimes it's money,
Yeah.
sometimes it's location. There's all these different factors that play into what a family needs. But I just tell them, because they always say, well, which one of these are the best?
Hmm.
And I said, it's not necessarily that matters, but it's not necessarily the reason. You want to make sure that your loved one wants to go to that program and falls in love with something that they do,
Right.
and kind of let that family member choose which program they want to. It's been my experience when they are able to pick on their own,
Yeah. The client
the client
themselves.
themselves, that's generally when the outcomes are going to be better.
Mm.
Whereas if the family says you're going
Oh
here,
yeah, it's very instructive and
it could work,
yeah.
but it's not
Yeah, it's not.
usually the way that it works.
Okay.
And so yeah, that's the goal.
Okay. I think we are starting to talk about the role of outreach. Maybe like you've seen like over 20 years, I'm sure like things have changed and things continue to change. So like in your view, how is the role of outreach changing over time? Is it becoming more prominent, more relevant in certain cases?
Yeah, I think outreach is changing. I think back in the day, quite frankly, there probably wasn't as many programs, so it was more readily available to kind of connect with folks, and kind of create an atmosphere of when it's you know you're getting a call, hey, it doesn't fit, just call such and such, they're there. There was very few programs to do. Now there's so many programs, so it's just kind of trying to keep up with all the programs,
Yeah.
making sure that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you're going to put eyes on them, especially a new program, and just learning what they do, meet their staff, meet their clinical team, and then yeah, it just making sure that you are staying connected, because this job is so easily to not to stay connected,
Mm-hmm.
because
You
you're
can just
just
miss things.
you're
Yeah.
doing this, you're doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just to make sure you're staying grounded, B,
Yeah.
staying connected, and then have a game plan. Because if you don't have a game plan, um, you can just fall to the
Say
wayside.
more. What is the game plan?
Well, I think it changes. I can't speak for detox, and
Yeah.
but generally people will have some type of game plan depending on how many beds there are at their facility, um, and then kind of what level of care, and then kind of making sure um, goals that are being reached, and kind of what your expectations are, and then what expectations are
Mm.
for the company. So
Yeah.
kind of trying to make sure that you're cohesive, and then it's okay to ask for help. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you say you want this particular thing happen. Well, how are we going to get there as a team?
So
So that
like, is it like working backwards from, I don't know, like even numbers wise, like this is the census that we want to be at, and based on that, these many calls or these many.
correct. And I think there's some people that are incredible, that know how to pull data.
Yeah.
I'm s- I think it's a day and age of data now,
Yeah.
and where you're able to use the data and kind of figure out, okay, what's the trend?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's trends in data, and the companies that actually know how to do that well,
Yeah.
are gonna, moving forward, are gonna only get
Better
better,
and
and others will not, unfortunately.
yeah.
I think using technology, it's
Yeah.
coming, and people are reluctant. We've had a conversation. I
Yeah.
think
We keep
I'll
having those
well,
conversations.
we do keep having this conversation. I
Yeah.
think AI is coming, and those who are willing to at least hear it, or at least open their door and have at least a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're gonna get a leg up.
Yeah.
And I think the people that don't,
Yeah.
um, will wish they had of. And
Hmm.
it's coming, and it's a matter of time. And if you're not able to implement it, you and I have had conversations. I think that just for example, just being able to, let's say you went to a conference and you got the business cards, and even you could even get 120 business cards, because you could immediately put them in
Yeah.
to the data
Yeah.
system, and then create a files of who you met, what was warm, what wasn't,
Yeah.
what you talked about, and then be able to shoot them.
Yeah.
The
Follow up.
follow up would be so much easier and manageable, and then also being able to create a calendar with
Yeah.
it. It's
Like
just it's
follow up in 2 weeks and
exactly,
the
and
five
then
touch
the
points.
5 touch points,
Yeah.
it would automatically know that you haven't
Yeah.
done the 5 touch point, and you could kind of, it will figure out what one maybe needs, one every 1 week, one
Yeah.
needs every 3 weeks, one
Makes me
needs a
think
quarter.
we should have a 5 touch point feature in our product. I'm not even kidding. Like I'm gonna steal that.
No problem, no problem, no
We'll
problem.
call it the Kelly
I like it.
magic
Thank you, I
num.
appreciate it. I just think those are key,
Yeah.
and I think it's coming, and I think
Yeah.
if you implement that, um, in your in for treatment centers and people in general, I just think it's why not don't put your head in the sand, just
Yeah.
be with it and
Look at what the data is telling you.
look at what the data is telling you. It all at the end of the day, it is a personal relationship business, and I think people relate to people, but to not utilize AI it just doesn't make sense to me when I hear people how reluctant they are
Mm-hmm.
to it. It just doesn't make sense. It's similar to folks that are reluctant to people using ketamine or doing some of those treatments that are not necessarily traditional style treatments. I don't have a opinion on it one way or the other, but I can say that I've seen folks that have been struggling with PTSD, that nothing else helped them. And so I'm all about getting data and seeing if what does the data really show, and I'm open to anything if somebody's willing to.
If that data tells you that 5 mean people will give you the best
Correct.
referrals,
I'm all about it.
That's the one to go for.
Exactly. So yeah, I just think those are things I'm always open, and that's the key in this business, I think, because it's always changing. It's kind of funny. Families will call and ask you specifically, does your facility do EMDR? And that was the trend like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was DBT and CBT. And I always say, because we do these treatments at our facility. However, is it appropriate? I don't know, because I'm not a clinician.
Yeah.
So just because we do some type of modality doesn't necessarily equate to it being used for your loved one, because there's a science behind everything. And so they want to make sure that they're willing and able to actually accept the treatments and the modalities that they're actually doing.
Right.
And that's what these people who have been in school for 20 years, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Should not be chat GPTing that. And then...
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you met the guy that created the app for if somebody's having a panic attack or some type of episode in real life settings, they're able to turn on this AI device to kind of give them grounding techniques.
Yeah.
We
were building some of that initially too.
Yeah. And my wife was like, of course they work. It's
super helpful.
It's super helpful.
Yeah. I mean, AI is like one of the top, pretty much the top application right now is for therapy. So it's very much there. It's only becoming more and more integrated into our lives.
And I think a BD rep can, especially some of the guys I know in this field, with AI, they would be lethal weapons.
Yeah.
They would be against the law because they're that good already.
Yeah, because and then you augmented with AI.
Augmented with AI to be able to just kind of allow them to focus on getting new relationships out there, because the possibilities are unlimited.
Yeah.
They're just unlimited, because you could reach out to hundreds of programs that are in your area.
Yeah.
And get connections and kind of have warm, conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
at least more shots at the goal.
And more shots at the goal. And that's what we were at the beginning of the conversation, is the more shots that you have, the better chances you have of having leads, because they're not always going to be, you're going to get a bunch of leads. And just because you're getting leads doesn't mean they're going to be a fit or qualified, or there's so many factors that play into that. So the more that you have, the better you're going to succeed in this role. And it's like a very weird dynamic. We're in the business, right? At the end of the day, it's sales, but it's the most, the fact that I even said this out loud and on video, it is a very weird dynamic, because we're helping folks.
Human lives.
It's human lives, and they matter more than anything.
Yeah.
And I want to state that, but at the end of the day, it is numbers. It's a business, and if the numbers aren't happening, unfortunately, that's the part of our business that you'll just have to go.
Yeah.
And so is this real tricky
Yep,
dynamic that
yep,
no one wants to talk about, but it is reality. And yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, it's one of those things. But I'm thankful, like I said, um, that I've worked for places that just care about the quality of care, and there's a ton of places. I mean, there's too many to mention, but yeah, that's the beauty of this business.
yeah,
It's so many people that are wanting to help folks, and that's
yeah,
at the end of the day, that's what people get. You have to remember, it's you're in this business to help,
yeah, yeah,
and I want people to go wherever they're going to thrive and wherever they're going to be successful,
yeah, yeah,
because I don't want them to be defined by either their substance abuse or their diagnoses. I think, um, you know, it's important for me to find your tribe, because I think that's the thing that we all strive for is
mm-hmm.
to find your tribe. And I
Yeah,
think, everybody does it differently, and whatever was going to work for you. That's what I always say. Pick something that you think is going to work for you.
mm-hmm. Got it. No, that makes that's like that's the core human thing, right? Like, so,
Yeah, that's the human to human thing, and I've done treatment before, and I've thrived in group settings, and I just think
mm-hmm.
that's another thing. Families want to know how many hours are one on one, and I can tell you right now, I've done individual therapy, for the last 20 years. Nothing compares to that group setting. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. There's something about being in a group
Mm-hmm.
and doing group work and pouring tears and pouring your heart out in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was strangers when I was there. And then by the end, going somewhere, I did a short term before. And at the end of the week, it was just,
Hmm.
we felt like we've known each
But
other for,
shared
it was
experience.
shared experiences. We felt like we knew each other for 20 years.
Yeah.
And to this day, I talk to some of those folks every day. And it's been almost over 10 years since I've done that kind of work.
Hmm.
And but I understand when families are concerned and people are concerned, but I'm telling you, the group work
Hmm.
is the most important. And that's what I see where people
Hmm.
get the most out of
Very
treatment.
interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, because I think you're going to, as you're continuing your levels of care, and after you've been stabilized, and after you've been able to do some of you're starting to do the deeper work. I think when you're finished, you're never truly finished with like work, but when
Hmm.
you're leaving as whatever level of care that you're leaving from, you're able to hopefully continue with a therapist and kind of do where you've left off. That's the goal of, like,
Yeah.
my hope is for anybody that's doing treatment now, has the ability, if they want. Some people are, fine after treatment, they don't want to do any work. That's fine. But folks that want to continue, that is so key. I think to be able to be connected to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a life coach or something, and then you can continue to do that growth work,
Hmm.
because I think you're always evolving, and so it's always great to talk and get help. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like talking about your outreach work a little bit, you talked about like a number of different kind of, so you're talking to hospitals, you're probably talking to EAPs, interventionists, etc.
Okay.
Does your approach to like building these relationships change based on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hospitals, again, it's more of a relationship of just, they want to know what insurances you take, what levels of care you have, and then kind of a little surface level of what you actually do in your
More
treatment.
transactional?
More transactional. Whereas I feel group practices or individual practitioners want to know everything about your program,
Hmm.
and educational consultants want to know everything about your program. So there's a different approach.
Because their reputation is a
Yeah,
lot more at stake.
correct. Exactly. I mean, you
Yeah.
said I couldn't have said it better.
Okay.
And so, and treatment centers will work together, whether it be somebody not a fit for them, even though they thought they were, whether the client doesn't like the facility and they want to go somewhere else. We try to help clients, even if they're, wanting to leave or coming to another treatment from another treatment center, just trying to help them get acclimated to where they want to go. And if they want to come there or go somewhere, then we do our best job to try to
Yeah.
help them get there,
Yeah.
and yeah, and just make sure that they're helped. But there is different ways. I don't know. There's no nuances to it. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's just it's a case by case basis, I would say, and everything is always there's always different situations, but yeah, generally the good rule of thumb is psychiatrists, education consultants, and therapists, and psychiatrists and psychologists kind of want to know, you know, generally the nooks and crannies of the whole program,
Yeah.
front and back.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Um, if someone were to like think about measuring success, maybe it's a so take it take the flavor of the question however you
Okay,
want to, but how do you measure success? Like,
that's a great question. um I think personally,
mm-hmm,
I measure success on getting someone into treatment,
mm-hmm,
whether it be my the place that I currently work, or just getting them somewhere, anywhere. That's my personal goal, and that will never change. And I don't worry about numbers, because if you worry about numbers, then
yeah,
you know there's a it's just it's to me it's just
the
not
numbers will happen
will
probably
happen.
based on the
Correct. Especially if you do it the right way, it'll just come. Um, I would say if I was speaking for the company, there's always going to be a certain amount of numbers for each and every individual
mm-hmm,
treatment center, and they have a number, and that's their goal, is what they want to reach. And so the hope is that you can partner up with some company that you can work with, that you can figure out a game plan to create
right,
success, both for your personal and for the company.
and even the business goals should align, like
Y-
realistic on both sides.
Realistics on both sides. You definitely want to have conversations on what expectations of the role
Hmm.
are, and then is it obtainable?
Hmm.
You know, everybody's going to have different opinions on this. I think you know it's just a unique, and it's always changing. You can always somebody could leave and take over a place and kind of change, move the goalposts, and that's happened to the friends that I've known before. And so it's a very unique dynamic, and you just have to you just got to keep your head down, and then kind of just keep plugging away.
Hmm.
And I don't, like I said, I don't worry about per se the numbers, because I just kind of try to make sure that I'm doing the calls I'm supposed to be making. If I'm doing everything that I think I'm supposed to be doing, then I know it will come.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's how I look at it. And sometimes I think my process is a little longer because I do the way that I do it. But I think once, when you do start to click, it'll
Yeah. It's a
click, and
much deeper
it's a
connect.
much deeper connection,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Okay. Maybe like you said 20 years. So like if you were to like go back 20 years, someone starting out, like what's one piece of advice that you would have for yourself starting out?
Ooh. I'm going to speak for mental health primary,
Okay.
because I'm not going to, I would say, um, learn to do the pitch your way.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because sometimes we turn into robots when we first start. We're trying to pitch and
Mm-hmm.
do it the way that, you know, that it says in the book. But I think if you're just passionate about what you do, I think that at the end of the day, that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you want to know what you what your treatment center does and how to approach it, and
Yeah.
kind of everything that goes around that factors. But I think that would be the most important. And I also would say, um, meet as many people as you can,
Mm-hmm.
and also try to meet not just the BD rep. I think we fall into this trap where I was just talking to someone today. My goal is to not only meet the BD rep, it's to also try to meet the admissions folks,
Hmm.
or the case managers, or the discharge planners, or whatever the case
They
may
are the
be.
ones who are going to be calling you too, right?
Correct. And so it's imperative to kind of see how each treatment center is completely different. Some BD folks take the admissions call,
Yeah.
And you have to figure that out, because the key is, okay, you like me, I
Mm-hmm.
like you, I think you guys do quality work. Um, who gets the call when there's a higher acuity, or who gets that call when it's whatever they do? You
Yeah.
want to know who takes that call, because even if you're friends with the BD rep,
Yeah.
what does it matter if
Yeah.
they're not getting the call, and then they're not necessarily talking to that person, and passing on that information. Now, there are places that call you and say, hey, Kelly, the admissions person will call me and say, hey, I've
Yeah.
got such and such, I got this case, can you help me out? That happens all the time. But to me, it's always good to actually know
Mm-hmm.
the admissions person firsthand for the place,
Hmm.
because it just helps you. It just is an easier
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
and an
100%.
easier,
A lot more trust
a lot
there.
more trust that way
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to do that a lot more, and I don't think that was always the case
Okay.
back in the day. I think it was kind of, you know, you could know the BD rep, and the BD rep would get that information too. There's just it's completely changed,
Hmm. Okay.
and that's what I would say.
Okay. Maybe on similar lines, but like, what's a common misconception that people might have when they're joining the industry or like joining the outreach space?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Um, I don't know, because I think you always got to stay on your toes, because what was good 6 months ago might not be good today.
So don't get complacent.
Don't get complacent at all. Um, it's easy to,
Yeah.
because listen, there's sometimes the phone is just
Yeah, the business
ringing.
is good and
The
then
business is good, and the phone is ringing, and you're getting people into your treatment center, and it's just golden, and you cannot let your foot off the pedal
yeah,
and in the BD role. It will
just
always come to bite you.
okay.
It will always come to bite you. Just stay on the gas,
Keep grinding.
keep grinding. When you're off, stay grounded. Take your time. When you're off, be off.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
take clean breaks.
take a clean break. I know people don't want to take the clean break. I get it. Um, and when I mean clean break, obviously your phone is your lifeline. You're gonna take the call if you have somebody calling in to be
Yeah.
placed. That's the nature of our business. That's part of the job. But I'm talking just if you're on a vacation with your loved one, or by
Yeah.
yourself, or whatever the case, it's okay to just
Yeah.
take a moment of
Recharge.
recharge, because if you don't recharge, you will burn out in this job,
Yeah.
because it requires a lot.
Yeah. 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 You've been on the road for
You've been on the road. We've been on. We've seen
Yeah.
each other for
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks. So, and it's not just that. You're also dealing with emotions. You're dealing with families. You're
Yeah.
dealing with, you're dealing with everything. So that it comes. Like I've got family member wanting to put a loved one in a facility. In hearing the stories, it definitely
affects you.
affects you.
Yeah.
So, I'm human. So, yeah, you have to be able to take a step back and just
Mhm.
kind of, just do some you time,
Yeah. Yeah.
or me time, I guess would
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah. All right. So maybe like a couple last questions, more on the personal side.
Okay.
What's a recent movie or like maybe like a movie or TV show that you watched that
Ooh, Landman.
Landman? What is that?
Oh my God, Landman is about a guy that's an oil guy, that is like the fixer.
Hmm.
So when there's like a problem, like whether it be like at the oil wells or in the corporate side of it, he kind of is the guy that does. He kind of is just like the guy that connects both the underbelly side of of the business, and also the corporate side.
Mm,
Yeah. I think it's Billy Bob Thornton. He's phenomenal in that movie.
okay.
He's phenomenal. It's a
All right.
series. It's phenomenal.
All
It's
right.
2 seasons.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great series. That was a series I just finished. I watched The Shy. I'm still watching that. Um, what is the other one I just watched? My wife made me watch Fubar
I
with
think. Yeah,
with
yeah,
Arnold
yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Yes, yes, yes,
That
yes.
that was
Yeah,
it's cute.
yeah, yeah. It's a fun
Yeah,
watch. Sure.
yeah. And I'm trying to think of what else. There's one other one in it. I can't remember right now, and I'm mad because it's gonna come to me, and
We'll put it in
I'll be
the
driving home
transfer.
tonight, and I'll be like,
Texting.
oh, I'll text you. But yeah, that Landman is phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I highly recommend that.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's pretty much the end of it. Any parting thoughts for?
Yeah, I mean, if like I said, if you're new in this business or have a family member or anything like that, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm happy to help anybody that's starting in this business. I'm happy to help. If they have any questions or concerns or just want to pick my brain, I'm happy to do it because there's things that I have in here that I don't even
Yeah.
realize that can be a nugget, but
Yeah.
like you, I did the 5 points. So,
Yeah.
by all means, but yeah, I just want to say that, thank you for having me. It was
Yeah.
been an
No.
awesome experience and, a
Pleasure.
little nervous at first because I'm not not used to the camera, but
You're a natural.
oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But yeah, that's it. And, it was a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.